Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, I'm going to go a little bit different route with my questioning. In testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee in December of last year, you stated that the FBI is, quote, especially concerned about the possibility of Hamas supporters engaging in violence on the group's behalf, end quote, and that the threat from a, quote, terrorist organization who may exploit the attacks in Israel as a tool to mobilize their followers around the world, end quote. We've seen a lot of conduct today that I think is concerning to many people in terms of Hamas terrorists and their sympathizers. Reports have surfaced alleging that many of the groups intimidating and violating the civil rights of Jewish American students, like the Students for Justice for Palestine, received guidance and financial support from American Muslims for Palestine, and that AMP's directors allegedly have links to groups which fundraise for Hamas. Director Wray, is the Bureau aware of or investigating whether these groups violating the civil liberties of Jewish Americans are connected to or affiliated with Hamas or other terrorist organizations?
So we are investigating a lot of attacks and threats against the Jewish community. I've been very vocal on how big a concern that is, and certainly that was already heightened even before October 7th, and since October 7th, it went to a whole nother level. We are actively engaged with Jewish community, both locally and nationally. When it comes to foreign terrorist organizations and their role, or foreign adversaries and their role, we are looking hard to see if we can find linkage, for example, funding or things like that. Nothing that I can report at this time, but it's something.
But you're investigating it.
It is the kind of thing that we're looking for, absolutely,
okay.
Because we know that there's an interest in their part to foment.
We're watching it
yes.
in real time today.
Right, yes.
There are other reports that Mayor Bitar, National Security Council Coordinator for Intelligence and Defense Policy and Deputy Assistant to the President, was an active member in Students for Justice in Palestine at Georgetown University, which is one of the groups alleged to have ties to Hamas. Is the Bureau investigating whether the Biden-Harris administration is compromised by pro-Hamas groups and organizations?
Well, again, we're having quite a number of Hamas-related investigations.
I'm asking specifically about whether you are investigating whether the Biden-Harris administration has been compromised by pro-Hamas groups.
There's nothing along those lines that I can think of to report.
I also want to talk to you a bit about the FBI's investigation and involvement with the Russia collusion hoax. And the FBI was involved with that because of its potential relationship to election interference. Is that correct? The FBI's involvement in investigating the Russia collusion hoax. That was because there was concern about election interference. Is that correct?
Well, the FBI was involved and staffed as investigators the Special Counsel Mueller investigation into efforts by the Russian government to influence and interfere.
With the election, correct?
Yes.
All right. So is the FBI investigating what just happened with Joe Biden being forced out of the race after winning the Democrat primary as election interference? Is the FBI investigating that right now?
I'm not aware of any investigation along those lines.
Director Wray, it was reported in March that the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force resumed communication with social media companies. And an FBI spokesman has stated that, quote, in coordination with the Department of Justice, the FBI recently implemented procedures to facilitate sharing information about foreign malign influence with social media companies in a way that reinforces that private companies are free to decide on their own whether and how to take action on the information, end quote. Director Wray, what specifically is the FBI doing to reinforce that such decisions are, in fact, for the private companies to make and not the administration?
So I think the best way to summarize it is that the guidance makes all kinds of additional steps to underscore that the FBI has no interest in participating in any way whatsoever in the company's decision-making, that companies are completely free to take any actions on their own, that we are simply passing information on to them for them to do whatever it is they want to do independently, consistent with, I should say, I very much appreciate the Supreme Court's finding that no evidence that the FBI coerced platforms to take content down.
Well, I don't believe that that's what the Supreme Court found. What the Supreme Court found was that the parties involved didn't have standing, but I think there's a whole body of evidence and legal analysis demonstrating that, in fact, this administration was violating the First Amendment rights of folks through social media companies. I'm just going to ask one final very quick question. If the FBI was involved in the removal or restriction of speech of Americans, do you agree that this would be a violation of the First Amendment?
Well, again, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. My understanding and my strong view from everything I've seen is that we did not violate the First Amendment.
Okay.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas.